think we're ready to go.
Hey, all right. Thank you so much, Mario. Here we are in Miami, virtually speaking. I am so excited to be here. It was a year ago, almost to the weekend, that I went to Maker Faire in Miami, which was wonderful. And of course, as you know, situation being as it is, it's a virtual one this year rather than in person, but looking forward to one day doing it in person again. I will tell you though, I am really excited about the fact that this is a virtual online one, because it gives me a chance to do something that I absolutely couldn't do in the real in-person Maker Faire, which was bring my entire workshop to show. So normally in the past, since around 2008 or so, I started going to Maker Fairs and bringing projects, typically things that were this big or smaller, so that I could show something I'm working on. But this is sort of a meta project. It's my whole workshop. So what I want to talk about today is a little quick bit about me, a little intro, who I am, why I'm here, why you might be watching me. And then I want to talk about my workshop itself, as well as how I live stream my John Park's workshop show for Adafruit, which is a weekly show. Let's see, along the way, I'll definitely be able to hit questions and answers at the end. And I think in the Whova app or web app, you can ask questions there for the session. And Mario is going to be taking a look at those, and we'll have a bit of time at the end to talk about your questions, and hopefully I can answer them. Then I also will go over the sort of layout of the shop, work surfaces, organization such that it is, storage, tools, both large and small, as well as the sort of second layer on top of my workshop that isn't about making things, but it's about making video and audio and doing live streams and pre-edited video. So let's get started. First of all, a little bit about me. Let me switch the camera up here so you can have a look in the shop as I talk. So I have been working for Adafruit as a full-time remote contract maker for the past 4 years. And what I do is build tutorials. I make guides, learn guides for the Adafruit Learn Guide system on how to build projects. So I get to build projects here in my workshop as well as in my studio. I have an indoor studio space that's where I do more. I have an electronics bench in there, synthesizers, a lot more air conditioning. So I get out of this heat. A quick aside, I don't know how hot it is outside here today in Los Angeles, but I do know that I checked the temperature of a cappuccino mug that I left out there, and it's 115 degrees on the exterior of the white cappuccino cup. So yikes. So this is the space where I do a lot of my building, fabrication of stuff, as well as I've got this camera set up, lighting set up, audio set up, and software set up to be able to stream. Before that, I had hosted a show for American Public Television, PBS, that's called Make Television, in association with Make Magazine. And that was an interesting experience, which I'll contrast to this a little bit, because it was working with a fantastic professional television production crew at Twin Cities Public Television under the executive production of Richard Hudson, who had decades of experience doing incredible, sincere science programming. So I had a really great opportunity there. And it was fantastic because I got to work both as a co-writer on the show along with Bill Gerstel, as well as a host on camera, building things and talking about projects each week. So we did a season of that, 10-episode season of that. And on that, we had producers, directors, lighting, grips, camera. We had editors, sound, music, you name it, makeup. So all of those are things that were wonderful to have someone taking care of, someone else with lots of experience focusing on. But that, as you can imagine, was something I had to figure out how to do in a one-man band sort of setting once I started shooting my own video. So after that show, I worked for the Maker Shed part-time doing some product videos and project videos. And that's where I started doing little mini DV cameras and a really long lavalier mic. I had a really not so sophisticated setup. And then eventually I got things like little digital recorders, these little Zoom recorders. These are fantastic. They're less than $100. They record to a micro SD card, and you can plug a mic, a little lavalier mic into it. So Lav is this kind of mic I have right there. So those plug into these. You stick this in your pocket, and you can record really nice, clear audio. You just have to remember to hit record and stop on them. And so shooting pre-edited video got a little easier when I started doing that. But as I came on board with Adafruit full-time, I started to upgrade some of my camera equipment. So I will show you a tour of that, as well as how those things are streamed into the computer in a second. And I also had to figure out how to do things like camera switching, recording if it was pre-edited stuff, and then video editing I had a lot of experience with, but being able to do all the pre-production stuff was an interesting challenge. And I'm happy to answer questions about some of the specifics there if people have them. Let's see, I'll touch on briefly, I've talked about this before, but I know it says it in my bio somewhere for the Maker Faire, but I had about a 20-year career in graphics, doing computer animation, computer graphics for, I was at Disney for 12 years, worked at Disney Animation, Disney Toon Studios, and I was in Disney Research inside of Imagineering R&D building, which was fantastic, doing all sorts of cool stuff. So that's rigging characters, modeling, doing those things as well as teaching those things was sort of my background before I came on to here full time. And then because I like to let people know, often people ask about what sort of engineering degree they should have to do this kind of stuff. There's a lot of different degrees you could have. Mine's in theater. I actually majored in theater. I studied acting primarily, but I also sort of split my time with doing prop building and other technical work, as well as audio design and setup and technical work. So as it turns out, it took 20 years of my other career for me to arrive at kind of the stuff I was doing back in college. But here I am now doing presentation of stuff and building, as well as all of the behind the scenes making. So I think that's a decent enough intro. And then when I started to go full-time with Adafruit, I decided to kind of reconfigure this workshop, which was just a place where I made things, into a place where I could make things still, but also film them. So what I'm going to do, actually, let me talk a little bit about the setup of the workshop by taking you on a tour with a camera that I can walk around with. So I've got actually got a Raspberry Pi camera, the new high quality Raspberry Pi camera, and a Raspberry Pi and a battery pack. And this is running to an HDMI cable, a long one, about 20-foot cable. Hopefully that'll all stay together. I'm gonna hold it like carefully so I don't put too much strain on the HDMI. So let's switch over to that camera and let's see. Yeah, we'll put that in the side there for context. So let's start off in the workshop here. So this is my main workbench, and I'll start off also by saying I am not a neat person. I have lots and lots of stuff, and it's chaotic. So this is not one of your woodworking workshop beauty tours where everything has its perfect place. Mine's chaotic, but it works for me, and thankfully I'm the only one in here. So, so this is my workbench. I got a nice big steel workbench from a picker I know, cleaned it up a bit, and then I put a big butcher block maple countertop on it, which is just clamped on it to be a nice non-conductive surface that looks good on video, is fairly neutral, and that is what I do all my work on camera. Then I have a little side bench here. This is actually I have a lot of things from the kitchen, but this is a steel kitchen work surface that I've cranked up to its maximum height. And on here, I've got a power supply, hot air rework, some meters, some soldering stuff. This area here tends to have a Raspberry Pi or two as a little place to work on them. Even though Raspberry Pis are small, the keyboard and mouse and monitor tends to take some space. I also sometimes eat lunch over there. This is some of my parts storage. So this tends to be things that I don't mind them getting too dusty, or I leave them in bags, but this is a lot of Adafruit parts typically, other than microcontrollers. Those boards I have inside of these little cases with drawers, and I have another bigger set of those inside of my studio space where my electronics bench is. But here, you know, I can go and grab buttons and switches. I can grab potentiometers, some NeoPixel stuff. So that's a lot of my smaller parts that I need to grab. Up here, I've got a little space where I store some hand tools, some drills and drivers and nibblers and angle grinders, as well as just the overflow of stuff. I've got a couple of, or more than a couple of machinists boxes where I store flat stuff that stores flat nicely. Then this is a couple of school lockers. And these are great because it gives you a place to put your stickers. But it also is where I have things like paints and glues and lubricants and stuff like that. So that, again, it's chaotic, but it works for me, and I can get my hands on those things pretty easily. Same on this side, except it's more fasteners and AC electric stuff. Then I've got laser cutter and materials for laser cutter over here. And this is a beauty. I think I've shown this before, but this was given to me by my father-in-law, and it was a gift to his father from a neighbor who constructed it and made these gorgeous hand-lettered drawers for different sizes of screws. So I've still got all of the screws. These are probably from the 50s or 60s. And I dig into those sparingly because they're so lovely. Then as we work our way over here, I've got my main pegboard for tools and parts. Oh, look, I've got some projects I'm working on right now, and one of them has crashed up here. Let's see if we can jiggle that one. Where's your power going? So this is helpful. Behind this little workbench here, I've got a power strip, and you can really make your life better by nailing up power strips. So if you see here, I've got a large, maybe 10 outlet power strip along the back there. This is the best solution I've ever found for pliers and cutters. There's a lot of ways people try to do this. This works the best for me. It's just two boards with a little bit of a spacer that allows me to just drop things in sideways, and they stay there pretty well. And then I've got some socket and open-ended wrenches on nails there. So these are just hand tools that I grab pretty frequently. Larger stuff. For smaller bits and things, I've got a couple little of these and some small sockets. This is something I really love on my main workbench. This was a slide organizer for, there's a little metal case I have somewhere, and this is for putting slides. And I just put a lot of my small tools that I grab when I'm doing fiddly things in electronics, tweezers, a little hobby knife, some markers, a little power driver, and so on. So this is the stuff I grab most when I'm working over here on this bench. I also have just kind of this flat, these are overflow extra drawers. When I was restoring some machinist cases, I kept some of these extra drawers, and I just stick scissors and cutters, wire strippers, some crimpers, again, just to have stuff that's handy and easy to grab. And over here is resistors and capacitors that I need on hand in the shop here. Again, main bench. And then you'll notice I'm a big fan of these. So I've got these wire hangers, and I've got all kinds of alligator clip wiring here. This is also something that I've found handy over the years. And by the way, I know the focus isn't great on this. It's a manual, not an autofocus, and I don't have a way to adjust that easily as I'm walking around. But just having a little bit of acetone, a little isopropyl, that's water if it's unlabeled. That one's water and it does happen to be labeled. That was 3D printer water, so it was water that I was using just on a 3D printer bed to clean it. So I like having some bottles of stuff on hand easily there. This is a dark spot that you're not going to see very well, but down here I have camera, tripod, and knuckles and things for screwing things in, as well as for lighting. And speaking of lighting, we'll get to the main lighting in a second, but I really like these. These are just these little LED panels that either plug in or use a camera battery. And these are great for shaping the lighting on stuff when you're doing photography or video. I have a couple of these. You can change their color temperature from cool, which is where it is now, to warm, and places in between. And you can also dim them, although I usually use them full blast and then get back. And they're fairly diffuse. So I like using those when I'm doing photography. And they go on tripods with a little adapter. Again, I don't have a ton of tools in here because it's not really a proper workshop, wood shop or metal shop, but I've got a little sander, which I just broke a belt on, a little grind wheel, small band saw, really nice big old drill press. Let's see if I can get some light on that actually. There we go. Yeah, so this is I think I'm running out of HDMI cable. Hold on one second. There we go. This is a beautiful Delta drill press that came out of a munitions factory here in Burbank called the Burr Lake factory. It was used in World War II. Gorgeous press, and it works fine. It's got pulley and belt for speed setting, and I keep it on pretty low setting and do things like metal on it. And then a cheap vise there. This is just a little display storage thing that I like to put weird little ephemera in. This was a little toy that was my dad's when he was a kid, and then mine. A few of these are that kind of toy. I also have a nice socket set in here. Oh, it's going to fall out when I open this. Let's see. Slide this over. Nice little spin right socket set. There we go. Nice to have. All right, and then I'll give you it's a little hard to see, but this is overflow storage of projects. So you'll notice Slappy there. You'll notice our good friend Lars. A lot of projects I work on, I end up sort of revisiting or taking to events to show. So I always have this problem of where the heck to store things. And you'll notice when I'm at the workbench here looking out behind some of those cameras and monitors, there's a lot more storage there of projects, as well as ADA boxes. So if I head over this way, you'll see I keep all of the different ADA boxes that I've worked on. I have one set of back there. There was a Lucio Sonic Blaster bin that's almost empty now. Probably time to downgrade that one. And then over here, I've got a little other mill that I pull out to use for milling and PCB milling. Again, lighting, I need to spin this light around. Here's my CNC router from Avid, they now call themselves, but they were CNC router parts. Nice big benchtop mill. And then more storage. So I use a lot of these little Sterlite bins to put things in. Sometimes I'm even good and label them. Long USB cables there. Another thing that's super useful is these little spring clamps. And I use those to hold things to things all over the shop, especially for little camera and lighting things. There is a band saw that I intend to restore one day that's not in any working condition right now. As well as more material storage back here. This thing, by the way, spins around, and I never go to the back side of it more than a couple times a year because it's a pain in the neck, but whole nother set of acro bins on the other side of that thing. All right, so let's see. I'm gonna flip camera views here and talk about some of the filming setup. Actually, I'll keep this one out, but I'm gonna set this as the smaller view. So the Let's see, how are we doing on time? I think we're good. Let me check if Mario's yelling at me to speed things up. Looks like we're good. So in broadcasting or shooting video that I'm going to edit for here, there are four main considerations. There's cameras, there's lights, there's audio, and then there's how you're acquiring that stuff into the system, be it for recording and then editing or for live streaming. So we'll start off with cameras. I have typically a 3-camera setup for live streams. And so that's my main cam there. And you'll see me show up on it. Get the glare out of there. Like that. Okay, so that's the main cam on me when I'm behind the bench, and I put a monitor right behind it so that I can essentially look right into the camera and know how things are framed. Then I have, you'll see in my eye line right below that, when I'm looking at that camera, we have a smaller monitor here, and that is the bench cam. So that's this one here. And these are both Sony Micro Four Thirds cameras, the A6000 line. I think this one's an A6000, the other one's a 6300, but they're essentially the same. And those are outputting HDMI all the time. This one has a nice variable lens on it, and so I can zoom that view in and out manually. I don't bother with a remote on that one. This one here, I do have a remote on it, and I'll tweak my shot when I'm standing back here without having to go walk around. This, by the way, is my little bin of remotes that matter. And so I've got air conditioning, garage door, my main spotlight has a remote, and then that camera remote. Also Band-Aids. Good to have Band-Aids. I'm always cutting myself. So those are the two main cameras that I shoot. And I'll switch back and forth between those, and I'll talk about that in a second. While I'm live streaming, but I also record both of those directly to disk when I'm shooting pre-edited stuff like an AdaBox. Then I often use this little guy here, which is a down shooter. I don't have it on today, but this pops out. This is the kind of thing that teachers use. It's got a very strong clamp on it, but that folds out, and I set it right here to look down at a project that I'm using for usually the MakeCode segment. MakeCode Minute segment. And all of these feed into the computer with these HDMI to USB 3 adapter boxes. So those all show up as a USB camera, but they're very nice, high quality, high data rate. And then what we face with that, particularly when I'm live streaming, is how to bring those into the software. So what I'm going to do here is actually I'll point my, lock in this camera pointed at the screen. Just this is kind of safest way to do this without me causing audio delays and stuff when I try to really capture the screen. So if you see this screen here, this is what I use for broadcasting, and it's called Wirecast. It's very similar to OBS. And I have layers of cameras. So if I switch between them, you can see my main large background view changing there. And I'll set it to the big one. And then you can see these little smaller views here can change. And I also use this for things like my graphics and little intro for the MakeCode Minute. And so to make life easier when I'm over at the Workbench, I've created a couple of little button boxes. And these are projects that I've built and shared on Adafruit, and they are CircuitPython devices that are sending USB HID keyboard commands. And so if I press, let's see, let me not take us into a black hole, but there we go. So I'm switching between camera views, just as if I had clicked on them from here. And then I have a similar one over at the Workbench. So this is actually something that broke recently in the version of the software I use. So I just rolled back yesterday to make this work better again. So you can see if I go to overhead view here and a Workbench view here, that allows me to switch up what you're seeing as I'm talking. And, you know, again, these are the kinds of things that camera controllers do in a real live TV show situation. Directors point at monitors and people hit buttons, but you end up doing a lot of these things yourself when you're a solo production. Some other cool things that I do inside of the software here are if I go to, let's say, a full view, and then I want to show make code, I'm gonna flip again to this view here so that you can see what's happening on my screen. I have a session of Chrome running make code, which allows you to do a green screen background. And then in my software, I'm knocking that background out. It's chroma keyed out, so that way just the pertinent parts show up there. And so when I'm working, you'll sometimes see a green cast on my face because I actually see the green background, and then I can go in here and edit stuff and also show my down shooter with the real board underneath. The audio side of things, I just have this one lavalier mic. I showed this before. Let me go to this other camera. This one looks nice. This one focuses really well. That's one of the reasons I like the Sony Micro Four Thirds cameras, is they have really excellent autofocus. Actually, this one's doing a little bit of a bounce right now, but you know, I don't love autofocus in general if I'm doing photography, but if I can get, when I'm doing video, if I can get it to do that work for me, that's great. So lavalier mic running to a little transmitter, and then there's a matching receiver on the other end, and all of that goes through a little mixer and audio interface. So if we pop this camera off of its stand again, sorry, I don't have a quick release on that. This is a little tiny mixer that can bring in two mics, one with phantom power. This is a mic I use for voiceover. It was a gift to me actually from C. Grover, one of our community members. It's a beautiful mic, and it's a condenser mic which needs phantom power. Has great clarity. Sorry, I know that's wobbly and dark and out of focus, but anyway, it's a lovely mic that can be plugged in here, and I can also plug in an instrument or a synthesizer or something on a third channel there. And it's mostly set it and forget it. I tune my gain on my mic pack with that there, and overall gain there. And I also can listen in on stuff on the mic on that. So that's the audio setup. That's the hardware. Oh, for lighting, let's talk about lights. So if we go, let's go to the main cam here. So the main thing I have hitting me in the face is that really bright LED light. It's a Godox SL60W. I don't think that stands for 60 watt, but they're under 200 bucks, maybe 150 bucks or something like that. And they're terrific. I can't remember if that one has color temperature, but it does just have a dial for brightness. So that's hitting me almost straight in the face. If I head over, let me head over to that side of the bench, you'll see. So that one is providing my main key light, almost frontal key light. This is a fill that I usually have pointed to the side here, and you can see it hits the side of my face a little, brightens it up, and is also good for projects on the bench. And then I have a little bit of a fill off on the left. Often I'll shoot with that door open over there, and that gives me just tons and tons of daylight, but not when it's this hot. And then back here, this is a little dark here, which is okay. This stuff is bright just from overhead compact fluorescent and LED equivalent of compact fluorescent. Oh yeah, this thing never wanted to restart the on-air sign. We'll see if that fixes itself. And then when I'm over at the workstation, you can see there's a side light there and a frontal light there right over my workstation. So that's what's lighting me up. And that's the main thing for lighting. Now, I'd love to get more lighting over here just for shop safety. You can see I have to turn lights over to my drill press to see well if that door isn't open. So I may try to swap that door out instead of a roll up to swing out, and then I'll be able to hang lights overhead over there, which would be nice. All right, and then let's see. That takes us through most of the shop tour and equipment. I've talked about software here a little bit, and what I'm doing today is actually using this piece of software as a virtual camera, so it just shows up like it's one webcam. So as I go switching through views, you can see all that, but the Zoom session just thinks there's one camera input. And if you're doing Zooms and you want to make them a little more sophisticated, check out OBS. It's free and open source, open broadcast system or software it stands for. And it does a very similar type of thing where you can feed it all sorts of layers, camera views, overlays, effects, chroma keys, and Zoom will just accept it as if it's one webcam, which makes life a lot easier on the Zoom side of things, or whichever broadcast, most broadcast video conference software will accept that. Let's see. Oh, I see some questions over there. I'm going to actually put on my glasses so I can really read these. Someone asked, can you say the camera model name again? Yeah, these are, this one is a Raspberry Pi high quality camera module on a Raspberry Pi A+ Model 3 with a wide-ish angle lens. There's C mount and CS mount, so they're very small and tight. And then I'm using Sony A6300 with a prime lens. No, that's not prime. That one's a variable. It might even be the kit lens on that one. And a Sony A6000 overhead with a nice variable zoom. And then I have a hover cam, which is this down shooter here. And there are these little $30 HDMI to USB adapters that you can get on Amazon. Adafruit sells them now. I've just started experimenting with them, and they seem to work really well. I'm using some higher end versions of the same kind of thing, which is these video capture boxes from Magewell that do the same sort of thing. Let's see. We can probably get into other questions now.
Yeah, I have some questions for you, John. So
yeah,
let's talk about the 5-volt motor. Is there any already a board for the microbit that uses a 5-volt motor?
Yeah, so if you're trying to do microbit, or now also the Adafruit Clue uses the same pinout, which is that edge connector. I definitely know this one, and there may be others. This is one that I happen to have, and this is the Adafruit Cricket for microbit. And it could be overkill for what you need, but it definitely does 5-volt motors. It can also do 12-volt electromagnets and solenoids, or is it 5? It does 5-volt on those, but it has drivers on there, and it can drive like 4 servo motors and a bunch of capacitive touch and run NeoPixels. So that one's not bad, and the microbit or Clue just plugs right into there, and then you can code it in microbits, Python, in MakeCode, in Arduino, in CircuitPython if it's a Clue board. So that's a. Since you asked that question early, whoever had asked that question early online, I figured I'd get you a prop to show you. So thank you for asking.
And this is from Liz Clark. How many USB devices are you using? Do you ever run into issues with them stepping on each other?
So many. No, I don't run into issues anymore, and I think it's because I'm on a very beefy workstation. I'm really fortunate. I have a iMac Pro, and it has a lot of USB 3 buses on it, so I've kind of spread things out across. One thing I'll point out is when I'm video editing, this is something I built recently, and I'm loving it. I use a Midi controller. Let me switch cameras here. I use a, this is meant for being a MIDI sequencer and beat player, but I've adapted it to go through a teensy microcontroller, and I can use the wheels and buttons to send commands to my video editor. I use Premiere, so I mentioned that just because that's yet another thing on my USB. But there are, for whatever reason, things these days, for me, crossing fingers, I hope I don't curse it, work pretty well as far as having a lot of MIDI devices on a single machine. And that includes all those cameras, the audio, and so on. I'm going to set this over here because it doesn't want to screw in. But I will count those up for you one time, maybe, as long as it doesn't curse curse me, and if it does, I'm going to shake my fist at you.
We'll wait till the very end.
Yeah, I'm not changing anything now.
How does one start to write their own learning guide for Adafruit? How can somebody how can a hobbyist become a contractor for writing, make and learning guides for other folks?
Well, the first thing would be to just do it. And there are platforms like Instructables and Hackster.io and the Hackaday.io where you can just register and start writing up your own guides. So I'd say it's nice to have a platform where you can do that instead of writing your own web page from scratch. So I would check those out. If really the answer for how things start for a lot of people at Adafruit is the show and tell. There's a Wednesday weekly show and tell, and sometimes we have other show and tells during the week where anyone can come on and jump in and show something for 2 or 3 minutes that you've worked on. And often people have been asked after showing something there, or they'll say themselves, hey, I'd love to write this up as a guide. And then Adafruit will get in touch with you over email, and you can head down that path. And that's led to everything from people becoming one-time guide authors to regular guide authors to doing contract work on software to coming on basically full-time in the creative engineering team, which I'm part of. So there are a lot of great things that come out of sharing your stuff and showing your stuff. So that's my recommendation.
Okay, I guess the next question is, did you try anything special to get your OBS working on Zoom? Do you have any tricks?
I am not using OBS on Zoom. I don't think I've tested it on Zoom. I have used it on Whereby and through Restream.io, but I use Wirecast here. And I imagine the virtual camera stuff would work very similarly. Of course, the devil's always in the details with these things, but I had a really good, I did a series of about 13 episodes of a Make Code show for Microsoft, and I used OBS for that. I was in my inside studio, and I didn't want to replicate the Wirecast setup, and I didn't need to. It doesn't have so many cameras and things. So I used OBS, and it was a really good experience, but I believe there's one add-on that you need to do the virtual camera.
So yeah, are you on you're both your OS? You're on Mac for both of those, right? So there is a virtual camera you had to install, right? It's an open source virtual camera.
Yeah, for OBS there's an open source virtual camera. For Wirecast there's one built into the software, but it's closed source, expensive software. So not free.
I guess this is a question. Do you get free Adafruit parts?
Yeah, I do. In fact, the latest little pack of things that I ordered, I threw in one of these. Which is the Trinket Ruler. It's a ruler that has a trinket built into the end of it, and it has these 4 capacitive touch pads. And I've had one of these before, but I gave it to someone who wanted a red one, and it was like a limited edition. So I didn't have one. So I got one of these back because someone just published a guide on using this as a camera switcher, the same sort of thing. So I'm kind of addicted to making these little camera switchers or things that mute your audio or switch between apps. So yeah, I place, whenever I'm planning a project that I'm going to work on a guide for Adafruit, a few weeks in advance, end up ordering a box of parts from Adafruit.
What got you into tinkering around? Was it the prop making in theater? So what led you from theater to prop making to where you are today?
Yeah, no, I really started with taking things apart when I was a kid. I was pretty young. My parents were surprisingly permissive with me taking things apart, and I generally got them back together, so they were okay with it. And I started to build things, little toys, I blow up G.I. Joe figures. I was a typical pyromaniac with BB guns and fireworks and stuff like that, as well as building little forts and stuff. So I always kind of built stuff. My mother was always taking apart parts of the house and re-wallpapering and refinishing furniture and stuff. So I had a lot of inspiration from her and permission to make stuff. I've learned since that, I don't know how much this influences things, but there are definitely a lot of different makers in my family. There was on one side a tinsmith who had a pretty big shop in New York City doing different making of household things out of tin. So a bit of it might be genetic, but I think it's mostly just what I was interested in.
And then are your kids into making?
They like to make, my daughter in particular is very into hands-on crafts and making things. And She's a good artist and illustrator, so she likes to do things like bullet journaling. She's also huge into Minecraft and doing that. But I taught her to solder when she was like 6 years old. So every once in a while, she'll have a little project she wants to build, and we'll get together and do some, you know, your typical maker types of projects. So I think there's a little bit of that in her.
Yeah, I think you answered all the questions. I think some of the earlier questions was show us around your garage, which we saw.
Here it is.
You did that. Adafruit questions. Let me check here. Yeah, I think that's it, John. I think we have all the questions. I don't know if anybody wants to ask a question. Please type it in the chat or the Q&A.
Right on.
If anybody wants to ask a question live in audio, you could raise your hand and we can hear from there.
Yeah, I'm checking. There's also a Discord chat over on Adafruit to see if there's any questions there. I'm gonna put on my glasses to do that. And I'll say there are fantastic speakers. I think Sophie is coming up pretty soon after me, Sophie Wong. So stick around and catch some other great talks. And I have a question for you. Can people catch these after the event? Will they be available as an archive anywhere?
Yep. So after later today, I'll be posting all the live streams are being posted inside the app on our YouTube channel, and inside the community section with messages, it just has John Park's live stream, and it has a YouTube URL there. So all those are being posted live. Yours will probably be on in about a couple hours. So usually about 2 or 3 hours after the talk, they're posted.
Here's a question someone asked over in the chat. 9-year-old who's into stop motion and doll making has a pondering, wondering how Maker's eyesight will be affected later in life. I don't know. Mine was good until I was about 45 years old. And then it started to go downhill. And I didn't realize it for about a year. I was just holding things real close and squinting. And then a friend of mine said, dude, you need reading glasses. So now I put on glasses for close-up stuff. But I think that's just aging. Your eyes, the lenses become a little less elastic over time. So I don't think you'll hurt yourself doing any making. I'd say you're fine. And enjoy your stop motion. That's exciting. Very cool.
I guess in the last couple of minutes, you want to talk about your other hobbies, like the stuff you do, like the acrobatic stuff you do?
Oh, yeah, sure. You know, I really, in the last few years, have gotten into aerial straps, which is a circus art. Looks sort of like gymnastics rings, but without the rings at the bottoms. It's fabric straps. And there's a great school here in Los Angeles, Cirque School LA, that I've been going to for a number of years. I now do virtual online private lessons, but it's been really fun, even at my advanced years, to jump into circus. I was also putting together, I was telling Mario before this, I just produced and performed in a song with my kids. My son plays guitar and sings, my daughter plays piano and sings, I just sing. And we put together a song for an upcoming virtual online concert. And it was really fun. I was telling my wife, hey, the things I thought I was going to do when I came out of college included circus stuff and producing music. And then I didn't for 25 years, but now suddenly I'm doing those things again. So that's a lot of fun to finally jump back into that.
Well, John, thank you for your time, like always. Again, this stuff will be posted later today. John, this is the second time you do the Maker Faire for me, so that's awesome. The question come in? No, that's awesome.
It's been a wonderful experience. Thank you. Yeah, I've loved both of my very different Maker Faire Miami experiences. I'm sorry this one doesn't include getting to see and enjoy the food and other great things that Miami has to offer.
No problem. And we definitely thank John because he covered for me on somebody that had pulled out, and he said yes immediately. So John, thank you like always. We all love the work you do. We love the work you do in Adafruit. If you want to follow John, I will post all his places where you can follow John. His make code is pretty amazing for kids and for adults. And all the Ada boxes. I mean, if you're not registered to Ada box subscription, you don't know what you're missing. It's always the best deal and the best things early. So that's pretty cool.
It's a lot of fun, and it's a community. So yeah, I'm glad to have more people getting into our community. Thank you so much.
Thank you, guys. Please go see Sophie in about a couple minutes. Thank you.
Thanks.
Bye.
Bye.